Do we have a tagline?
What's on our Instagram?
Oh, goodness. Oh, maybe. Oh,
What's
our
the name
marriage
of the
didn't work, but
podcast?
our podcast might. Will. What? Maybe our podcast will. Tell me the line.
Helping marriages stay together by sharing what tore us apart. Helping marriages stay together.
No, I'll be sorry. It's not gonna work. What's the maybe our podcast will?
Our marriage didn't work out. Maybe our podcast will.
Okay. I like that. Welcome back to Sam and Jen Got Divorced. We are here with another great conversation for you and another great host for you. We're welcoming to join us Joel Witten. He is with us today. Y'all are going to have a blast. It's going to be awesome. And he'll let you know what we're talking about. I forgot the line already. I'm sorry.
Our marriage didn't work out.
Thank you. But maybe our podcast will. Thank you. All right. Can I do it again? Yes.
Yep.
Welcome back to Sam and Jen Got Divorced. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here having good conversations about our marriage. Our marriage didn't work, but maybe our podcast will. Okay. That's it. Oh, Joel. Shucks. Sorry. I usually get this in one take. Okay. Today, we've got Joel Witten with us. He's going to be our host and our asker of questions so that you guys can find out all the goods about all the goods. Join us. Stay tuned. Sit tight. It's going to be a good one.
What up, Joel?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
So my first question
Thanks
off the
for being
start
here.
is, what made you think of me? I'm honored to be here.
Oh, my goodness. We are honored that you are here. Absolutely honored that you are here to have this conversation with us. What made us think of you? Well, I'll be very honest. I thought of you. I'm not sure about what Samuel thought, but I've seen you around, and I think you are great with connecting with people. You're a great connector.
I appreciate it.
Connector with people and connector of people, bringing people together. And so that makes you a great conversationalist. It makes you a great asker of questions because people that can connect ask great questions. And just in a genuine, interested way, wanting to get to know others. And so I thought you'd be an amazing host to have sit with us.
How long have you two known each other?
Well, that's the thing.
wow.
The audience
Yeah.
wouldn't know that Genevieve and I go back to high school,
Yes.
Pickering High School.
Mhm.
Shout out.
PHS Trojans
Yes, yes.
in the house.
And then for myself and Samuel, we know each other, probably, I don't know, 20 years, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me. And I get to be the host. Which I actually found it today. I thought I was just being on the podcast. And I go, oh, I'm like hosting the thing. All of a sudden the pressure mounts a little bit. And it also becomes easier because you just get to ask the questions. So the topic of this series is going to be who carried the relationship. And the first topic, top number one, is going to be who carried the relationship spiritually. You're going to have shoes in your hands. One will be Genevieve's shoe. One will be Samuel's shoe. Each of them has one. And they, with eyes closed, they will raise the shoe of the person they think carried the relationship in that area. So the first area is who carried the relationship spiritually. So eyes closed, who carried the relationship spiritually, raise the shoe of the person you feel did so. Oh, very interesting. Okay, you can open your eyes.
It sounded like you raised both shoes at different points.
I did.
No,
Yeah.
you can know it. You can
If,
know.
if that's how you
You
feel.
can know.
Oh,
You
we can know?
Yeah, you can
We
know.
can tell each other?
Yeah. Well, do it again. Who carried the relationship spiritually?
No way. Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh my God. I'm so glad we're talking about this.
I'm surprised. I don't think there's any other answer than my answer. But
What? Oh my,
guess-
okay, let's get into it.
Oh,
'cause,
wow. We were just,
wow. We're going to have to talk, okay, criteria, please.
Okay.
Let's define
Yes.
what spiritual means.
What does it mean to carry a relationship spiritually to you, Genevieve?
Let me speak for myself. As an individual, voting for myself, I think I carry the relationship spiritually because my spirituality at that time within our marriage was very sound. I'm a person of faith. And so we're talking Christian faith. Not that that's the only spiritual way of being or what have you. Having a strong connection and a strong faith foundation is really important. And I believe that I had that, like just in terms of putting the marriage at the forefront of my prayer life and maintaining consistency in, prayer and the word and community worship and all of that kind of stuff. So I think my consistency was just on point, which is why I voted for myself.
Thank you for that explanation.
Sorry. So what it means, that's what it means to
Yeah.
carry the relationship
What does it mean
spiritually.
spiritually? So what does it mean to you to carry the relationship spiritually?
So when I think of carrying something, I think of two different functions. If we're talking about who carried the relationship spiritually, the question that I ask is who held up the relationship, and then who carried the relationship forward in this area.
Interesting.
How does it spirituality influence a relationship's foundation? How do you think?
Like depending on how important spirituality is to you, I don't think a relationship can have a foundation without it. In our case, we are both Christians. We were raised Christians, and we're also Christians by choice. We have a firm belief in Jesus Christ. We have a firm belief in life not being about ourselves, but for the purposes of loving God and loving other people, not just now, but for eternity. There would be no foundation if we weren't aligned on that. Like, we would not have got married if we didn't both believe that firmly, right? So
Yeah.
I think from everything that we did, all our plans, all our intentions were, in our opinion, supposed to be aligned to that in some degree. Now, was that actually what happened? We'll get into that. It was definitely not, at least from my end. But when I think of foundation, a relationship cannot be founded unless the people are quote unquote equally yoked or aligned on the same spiritual plane.
So I might veer away from specific spirituality in that sense. I think we are all spirit. I think that all things that take place in relationship on this earth or what have you have a spiritual component. And so I think we are spiritual before we are religious. I think we are spiritual before we are Christians, so to speak, because our essence is that. So when I think about foundational spirituality that connects people, I think of having a knowledge and an understanding of how we are made up as humans. And I think knowledge of that core part of self, like that sense of self, I think that essentially connects people. I think the rest of the stuff, like what we build on and how we direct our faith, is like icing on the cake, so to speak. And that doesn't mean I don't believe in one God or one faith or what have you. I have one God, I have one faith. But I think essentially underneath it all, we all have spirit, right? So when it comes to spirituality, I see that somewhat differently than having a specific faith tradition.
Okay. If everyone is spirit,
right?
Can everyone be aligned or married spiritually? I
personally think so.
Okay.
And I've seen it happen and of course work. However, when we differ in terms of where we place our spirituality or our faith in our value systems, then it matters.
Yeah.
But if that's just a part of, my identity makeup and so on, and it's not number one, then I can, just be with anybody who's spiritual and who understands that component.
So if someone doesn't have it high on their priority list, then it's that's reflecting their spiritual beliefs and the seriousness with which they take their faith, and that becomes a point of connection or a point of contention when we're talking foundation. If you're trying to build on a foundation and one person values it highly and one person doesn't, then you already have an unstable foundation.
Y'all are some smart people. Wow.
Yeah. Do you think spiritual responsibility should be shared equally, or does one partner naturally lead in that area?
I think it would be ideal to expect and to desire there be equality in any area of a relationship, but especially spiritually. Because spirituality and faith and so on, it has to do with personal responsibility. So I think by that very nature, and just like with differences of approaches to life, there will be different levels of maturity, which means that in a marriage or relationship, there will naturally be one person who might be stronger or who might be more disciplined in their faith and in their practices, and then who might be more knowledgeable, based on their experience of life, growing up and so on. So I personally don't believe in equality so to speak, like 50-50 type of thing. I think everyone's showing up at their best. And so if my best is like 30% or something, and your best is 70%, then sure, right? As long as there's conversation that happens around that, and then there's also acceptance, and then there's also agreement to continue to put your best foot forward.
So one partner should naturally lead. Should it be one or the other? Is gender involved in this?
I mean, when I think of like the biblical aspect of things, and the man should be the spiritual head of the home, then yes. But what that looks like on the ground, I mean, we have a lot of skewed and harmful ways of explaining what that should be in relationships, and it's more like gender roles, and you should do this, and I don't believe that.
You don't believe in gender roles?
No, I don't believe that they have to be standard,
okay,
or socially determined, right? Like the man should take out the garbage or something silly like that. I believe that's it's menial. I do believe in headship, but I think that means that we have to look at the biblical definition if we're people of faith. So taking responsibility in that way, and headship really in the biblical sense means that you die at the altar and you serve your wife and love her as Christ loved the church. That doesn't sound it doesn't sound like headship in our social context.
In our social context, where it's like Lord over you, and Jesus used that example Control, in Scripture too, power. Right? That to be the greatest is to be the servant of all.
Right.
You got to take the whole context there if you're going to expect submission, which is to come under a mission. Well, the person's got to be willing to respect that leader,
absolutely,
and believe in the mission to come under that mission. And it changes the whole picture of this. You need to submit to me. No. There's a mission here, and there's a context, and you need to be fulfilling your role for that person to feel comfortable and confident to come under that mission. Yeah. But it does lend back to the idea: is there one person who should lead? And again, I think it's safe as much as the podcast is for everybody. If we believe that God designed us and gave us the gift of marriage, and now it's been it's Judeo-Christian values. It's dispersed throughout the world as marriage, and people who don't necessarily even believe in God are utilizing this thing. You still want to go back to the designer to understand, if you're having problems putting together, is go back to, as much as sometimes we don't like to, go back to the instructions to figure out what's going wrong here. So is there a context, or is there an establishment that you believe, Samuel, in terms of one person leading more so than the other?
Yeah, we're talking spiritually, but I'm going to give the same answer in every episode that we talk about, which is two things. One, I agree with what Genevieve said about ebb and flow. There's no need for 50-50 if both people are giving 100 and 100.
That's good.
And some days I might be at 30%. Some years I might be at 30%. And then my spouse could be at 100%, or she needs to fill that gap spiritually and in every other way. And vice versa, right? Some days she might be at 10 and I have to fill the rest of that gap. So that's how I look at it. But I also think that ultimately it's the man's responsibility to lead in those areas. Does it mean that if a man and a wife get together and the wife is a little bit more advanced spiritually, that it's a big problem? Not necessarily. But the man's responsibility is still to make sure that as a family, as a household, the house is on the right path spiritually. If you think of the leader of an effective corporation, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox here for too long, but the best leaders are excellent at delegating, right? So if you're a leader and the person that you're working with is really good at X, you're going to let them lead in that area. And that's, I think, the healthiest way to do it.
And then you get into CEOs going to get training to be a good leader, and having 360-degree awareness in terms of being able to receive critiques from people under you, and asking for those things and all those different things. So even in that imagery, sometimes people don't necessarily have a full understanding of that parallel picture. But I totally agree. I think of my own context with my mom and my dad. And my mom was definitely very consistent on her spiritual practices, and she was a stay-at-home mom. And my dad was still very strong spiritually and led, but my mom played the larger part.
Right.
Wow.
Because your dad had
Yeah.
other concerns, other things
He's
to
taking
balance,
care of, yeah.
practically speaking,
Exactly.
right?
You know,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
daily
Yeah.
devotionals, that type of stuff. My mom was doing that. And it's like, and it's, again, it's another huge consideration for myself in the picture of who I want to marry is, would I trust this woman to disciple my children?
Right.
You know, and,
Yeah,
and I go,
that's
oh,
huge.
like jerks the slack out of me pretty quick. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so how can differing spiritual beliefs or practices impact a relationship's dynamic?
Oh, yeah. I think it's a good one. I think when I think of that question, I do think of my parents who do have differing spiritual backgrounds. My dad is Muslim and my mother is Christian, and she grew up Methodist. And they're divorced now, so there you go. No, I'm kidding. No, I think the okay. I think the component that I most focus on in that area is the connection. So spirituality, faith, belief, like alignment when it comes to values brings connection. It brings a level of intimacy between two individuals in a marriage. And when you differ, then it is already, it's already challenging. Relationships are already challenging on their own. But I think when it comes to different sort of spiritual, belief systems or what have you, it's hard because it's fundamental. It's like part of the essence of
It
who
affects
you are.
everything else.
Every area of your life.
Yeah.
How you think, how you see other people, how you treat other people, how you show up, the decisions you make, the rules that you follow, all the things. So I think it already, it creates a tear or a rift in the fabric, the foundational fabric of connection in a relationship. And so I think, like, when we talk about impact or effect, that it's actually negative. It's a negative impact.
Anything to add?
No, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the tenets of the major faiths in the world, and it is pretty clear that you're not supposed to intermarry with other faiths. I mean, obviously for us as Christians, like, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And it's for that very reason that you stated. It's just like you're talking foundation fundamentally. You're already starting on entirely different pages, and it's only going to show up. And again, to me, it speaks directly of how serious someone, or how seriously someone prioritizes. If you even are considering that, then you're already showing how seriously you consider your faith, because that's pretty much Christianity 101. Yeah. In terms of as a strength of like how deep you really believe and stand on your faith.
So you want to change your vote now? You want to change your vote?
No.
But no. I mean, he's okay.
We didn't have different faiths. Are you Christian? I'm Christian.
But we're talking about some fundamental things here when it comes to like consistency. Okay. Anyway, go on. We'll continue.
You lost me too. So let's get into the nitty gritty a little bit here, and more specific to you guys and your relationship. During your marriage, how did you approach spirituality as a couple, and did one of you take on more responsibility in this area?
I would love to hear your answer.
I think we already heard a little bit, so it's like, continue, Genevieve.
Okay, repeat the question. It was a double question.
How did you approach spirituality as a couple? And then did one of you take on more responsibility in this area? Do you feel?
How did we approach it as a couple? I think we were pretty practical when it came to conversations about spirituality. We talked about what it sort of looked like in terms of like prayer and Bible studies, where we'd go to church. It was pretty practical in terms of like the day to day. So I think we approached it, kind of. I don't know.
Would you say it was foundational for both of you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I think that
was kind of understood.
Yeah. And I think that was a premise. You were both serious believers. You wouldn't have considered someone outside of your faith, or someone who you didn't consider to be strong in that area.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of the foundation. So do you feel as the marriage progressed that there was a tension where one person felt like you're pulling more weight than the other.
Yes, 100%.
Want to talk about it?
Thank you all for joining us today. Make sure if you haven't that you like, follow, share, subscribe. We love to have you, and we'll see you again soon.
See you next time.
Mhm.